Welcome back, or welcome if you're just joining us. This is the France 24 debate. We're talking after weekend raids by U.S. forces, special forces, in both Somalia and Libya, with a special focus on the situation in Libya and a brewing power vacuum 2 months after, 2 years rather, after the ouster of Muammar Gaddafi. With us to talk about it, she's the author of A Woman's War, coming out soon in English, Céline Bardet, human rights attorney. Also with us, William Jordan, former North African Bureau Director at the U.S. State Department, and Pierre CONESA, who is the author of The Manufacturing of an Enemy, or How to Kill with a Clean Conscience. How you spin all of this is very important. And Pierre CONESA, the United States having trouble killing with a clean conscience with the heavy-handed use of drones, more and more so. In this particular case, you had actual human beings going in for after these targets. Is this the start of a new trend, perhaps?
I think so, yes, probably, because, you know, do you remember all the campaign against UAV attack and some kind of anonymous strikes, you know, which were, in a way, also having collateral damages a lot in Pakistan. So, in a way, it's a new change, and we can agree with that evolution, yes, in a way.
William Jordan?
I don't know. I mean, I think, again, getting back to what I said earlier, I mean, I think every one of these operations is specific. I think you undertake the operation with whatever tools you want to bring to bear, depending on the actual conditions. I don't think that we're going to see the end of drone strikes where that's appropriate. The problem with drones is that you can only deploy them so many places and ramp them up to do certain things. You know, going in like this, if you know exactly what you want to do and the risks are acceptable, I mean, you'll do that. You know, because I think you have much more control over the immediate situation. But I mean, Libya was an obvious success. Somalia was less so. Again, I think you know, these things will all be situationally dependent. And as we were saying before, it'll depend on what the intelligence tells you, it'll depend on the assets you have in place, and it'll depend on how quickly you think you need to act.
But not all in public opinion.
No, I don't think public opinion will come into this at all.
All right, we were talking about Libya just before the break with Céline Bardet. Libya, by the way, in the midst of 3 days of national mourning for 16 soldiers mowed down outside the capital on the road to former Gaddafi stronghold Bani Walid. Well-armed gunmen, they showed up and opened fire at point-blank range. Now, Céline Bardet, we don't know exactly who did this. It's shocked Libya, of course. Obviously, there's several possibilities. Was it Gaddafi loyalists? Was it Islamists? Was it some kind of turf war? But we're seeing more and more of these attacks, especially in the past couple of weeks.
Yeah, but that's what I was about to say just before. I think we need to look at it from a far broader perspective, because you are, and actually the Prime Minister was saying that, Libyan Prime Minister was saying that a few days ago at the UN General Assembly. Okay, this is a post-conflict situation after 42 years of dictatorship. Okay, this is unique, first of all, in the world, and they are building their states. And now they have the problem, now they have the problem with militias, they have the problem that you can find in many other countries. You know, I worked on organized crime, and that's just things sometimes have to be looked at from a very simple perspective. There is a country under complete destabilization, while trafficking then go there because it's easier, because there is no state, nothing is functioning. So this is what is happening. It works for terrorism unit, and so that's what is happening in Libya. And I don't know, but I wish I could find someone who can tell, okay, I know what's going on. I think nobody knows what's going on. Nobody. And first of all, the Prime Minister Zaidan, and he said so. And so they are trying, but it's so complicated. Now there are also the issue of tribe, of clans. This is very specific. So this is the way we have to look at it. I think we should refrain to look at it from maybe our European, US, perspective. And second, I just wanted to say, I don't, when I was mentioning just before this CIA after 9/11 and what we call the extraordinary rendition, I mean, there are cases, I worked on that for the Council of Europe, of people who've been abducted by, alleged CIA people, in the middle of the country. So these kind of things, very clean, very quick, have been done before. And so I just wanted to remind that.
In this particular case, though, the U.S. authorities saying that they're going to send him to New York, where he's going to be tried in a court in public.
Yeah, but I was talking, following 911, there are people who were suspected of terrorism, and they have been sometimes abducted in country, in Macedonia, to be brought actually to Guantanamo in that case. So just saying that has been done before, and that's a kind of practice that is considered illegal by the EU, but that was done.
That was done back then.
Yeah, before.
On Twitter, a comment in Libya, we don't need crisis management, we need damage control. Now, this, of course, the disputes that we're seeing in Libya that Céline Bardet was spelling out, seriously denting Libya's main source of revenue, oil and gas production, with the numbers plummeting spectacularly, especially since the month of July. The leader of one militia, entrusted with leading Ajdabiya's petroleum defense guards, turning on Tripoli back in July, shutting down the terminal, and demanding greater autonomy for eastern Libya. The move by 33-year-old Ibrahim al-Jathran, prompting a copycat shutdown in the port of Zintan. Margaret Coker interviewed him for the Wall Street Journal. He claims to command 17,500 men, each paid roughly the equivalent of $950. He says... She writes, many of them visible, patrolling the highways, crossing much of eastern Libya, as well as the gates of the major oil facilities. Jathran declined to say where he got the funds to pay their salaries. I think of this as a job creation plan. So, Pierre CONESA, when you see this situation brewing where basically right now Libya is balkanized in the same way that Iraq is. All this is happening on the shores of the Mediterranean, a country that's the gateway to Africa. The same U.S. and French and UK forces that stepped in, are they responsible to step in now?
You know, the map of heavens for terrorists is more complicated than that. Some recent crisis in Africa seems to focus mainly on the risk, African risk, but I would like you to pay attention to two aspects, which seems to me very important. Today, if you are an international terrorist, you have two kinds of heavens. The first one is that these collapsed states like Somalia, Iraq, Libya, etc. But you have also a very good protecting heaven, which are the paramount legal systems of democracy. Today, we are asking Canada to extradite the guy who was responsible of the Rue Copernic terrorist attack. 35 years ago. Do you understand? And Rashid Ramda was also protected by the English system 11 years ago, long. Today we have no policy. We have no international policy to fight against. The biography of al-Libi is very interesting because, he was a Libyan guy who flew, to Afghanistan through Saudi Arabia.
In the 1980s? In the
1980s. So he went back to Sudan, where he organized, the terrorist attack in Kenya and Tanzania. But then he went to London and he got the political asylum there because he was an opponent to Gaddafi. Yeah. And probably this guy, and we have also some cases in France who are protected by political asylum.
But Pierre, this was obviously before September 11th, 2001. After September 11th, haven't policies in Western countries changed on that regard?
No, the England changed because they had the 2004 terrorist attack in London. That's why we get, Rashid Ramda. No, I think we have to implement a very normal legal system regarding terrorist attack. It's not possible to wait for 35 years long before to get, the guy who was indicted as the responsible of the Rue Copernic attack, That's the very important case.
But getting back to the question that we posed, the U.S., France, Britain stepped in forcefully to tip the scales against Muammar Gaddafi. We've just painted what's a grim picture of a lot of places right now inside of Libya. What
Yes.
should Paris, London, and Washington be doing about that?
No, I think I'm just explaining why Americans are using such a solution. Why are you asking to the Libyan legal system to extradite that guy who is probably protected, which means that if there are Libyan police arresting him, it will be a violent case, more violent than the American operation. So, I mean, you have to also to take in balance that case. And just to conclude, the two cases, I mean, Tripoli and Barawe were harbors. I mean, it's so easy to make an operation coming from sea, to make just a strike, to kidnap the guy and back. Just remember that Somalia is more complicated than Tripoli because the GSA of France has also failed. You know, remember to free Mr. Alex, who unfortunately has been killed. So it's not so easy, and you have to take this solution because it's cruel, but it's the realistic solution, and we will probably have to do it too.
On the France 24 debate Facebook page, we asked you whose job is it to fill the power vacuum to prevent the likes of Al-Qaeda from setting up shop inside of Libya. Among the answers, we got one from the doyen of the Anglophone press corps in Paris, John Keating, who says, I think we know where the answer is, but are we interested in admitting it right now? Not so sure. A dig at, again, London, Paris, and Washington, who tipped those scales to oust Muammar Gaddafi. He seems to imply it is the responsibilities of Western capitals to go in and do more.
How? I mean, are we going to send the Marines into Libya? I mean, are we going to invade and conquer Libya and try to restore order? I think getting back to something that we sort of got into earlier, I mean, I do, even though I've sort of described how I think the U.S. government talked to the Libyan government about Libya, and indicated rather indirectly that it wanted to grab him somehow. And even though we've seen this operation whose details are still somewhat murky, I am the first to admit we cannot believe there will be no blowback. I mean, there is inevitably going to be some kind of a backlash in terms of Libyan public opinion. And just as the whole situation in September 2012 with the death of Ambassador Chris Stevens caused a lot of problems and is having an impact on how the U.S. government is able to prosecute its relationship with Libya now. I mean, from what I hear, the embassy is basically a lockdown. The ambassador who's there now is operating very much on the understandable principle that security comes before everything else in terms of, there's not going to be another repetition of this. And there's a small contingent,
there's a fear in Tripoli of an attack on the U.S. embassy after this.
I should believe so, and there is a sizable, although restrained, contingent of Marines ringing that building now, in order to prevent anything from happening. The U.S. government, and I would submit France, London, and other Western and international powers are going to have to sort of deal with the fallout from this operation today in interactions with Libya. I mean, the obvious, but difficult to achieve answer to all of this is to work with the Libyans to build up their capabilities and to gain sort of control over these militias and what have you. But it has so far proved frustratingly difficult. And even though I know that the U.S. Africa Command is in the process of trying to figure out how to train, probably offshore, elements of these militias in order to create a viable Libyan military force, it is not going to be easy to do.
It's not going to be easy to do, and we can add another layer to all of this. Last month, the Tunisian government, the neighboring state, looking into the assassination of two outspoken secular oppositions in their own country, accusing a radical imam, Abu Ayyad, believed to have stoked the attack on the U.S. embassy that happened in Tunis, the same day where the ambassador was killed in Benghazi. He's accusing Abu Ayyad of regrouping and forming men out of Zintan inside of Libya. All of these different elements, closing of the oil terminals, the attacks that we're seeing more and more on security forces, also what we've seen with the various parts of the country seemingly breaking off, it doesn't seem to be concentrating the minds much on this side of the Mediterranean.
I don't know, but first I wanted to say, I think, maybe the answer is also, to try and to provide support and help to the Libyan government to improve their security service, to set up their government. They have, you have to, I'm not here, I don't want to defend the Libyan government or anything, but they are also good people who are trying to do things. And I really want to say that because it's difficult. And they need help. The problem with Libya is that, hey, it's complicated because they are very proud and they have this kind of schizophrenic relation with foreigners because they have been under Gaddafi and completely, paranoid on everything, and now they don't know. On one hand, they want the support, but on the other hand, in reality, they don't want it because each time you're trying to do something, they look at you as the foreigner who is coming in. And, I have the example, I was in New York with the Minister of Justice. We are trying to have this law on sexual violence, and that's how he's been criticized. So you see, that's very complicated. But I think this is one of the answers. And again, I'm sorry to say that again, but it takes time, and we have to deal with that. So in the meantime, and I'm not a political analyst, I'm not working with secret services and etc. I have no clue about all that. Maybe in the meantime, there are things that need to be done in a certain way. I don't know. I don't want to say I'm supporting that. Actually, I don't. But they need time, and we need to provide them support because it's really deteriorating, and I'm sure that there are ways to support them, but for that you need to talk with them, you need to go there instead of looking at it from outside and coming up with, conceived ideas and that they refuse anyway.
And do you feel as though Western leaders are talking enough with leadership in Tripoli?
I'm not sure, to be honest. And especially now, and I'm French, and when I look at my country, for example, I have the feeling that, we have been heavily involved in Libya, clearly, and that now there is kind of, that's how also they feel, the government, that they are kind of let down, especially by France, when it comes to support, because they need support, they have ideas, they want to do things. Okay, I'm working more on the justice things, and that's an issue also of how to prosecute what's going to happen with the son of Gaddafi, and etc. They don't want to give it to the ICC. I'm not saying they are right or not, but what I'm saying is that there's a reality, and why don't we try to help them and work with them? Even though, it's not going to be perfect and etc. Why don't we do that? Instead of continuing to fight and to point it on them, saying, look, your country is failing. A few days ago, there was the question, CNN, not to mention Christian Amanpour, I found it interesting, who was asking the Prime Minister Zaidan, is Libya failing? And I was thinking, okay, what would I say if I was a prime minister and having this question? And of course, he was saying, no, we are not failing. He wouldn't say something different anyway, but he was saying, we are trying to set up our state after 42 years of dictatorship, and with everything that is connected to that. And to finish, and the issue that one good point, if I may put it like this, that Gaddafi had was, and we all know, was this, he was able to control all these tribes. Now you have the issue of tribes, you have issue of clan, you have, I repeat again, organized crime. I worked on heroin trafficking the past year. Now there are more and more seizure of heroin in Libya. And there is money that is being made by these people. So why do we want them to stop? This is what they're doing.
Pierre, you've made the argument before when we've talked about this in places like Kosovo. There was a plan for what would happen afterwards. Pierre CONESA, was there a plan after the ouster of Gaddafi?
No. What plan? No, I'm just worried about the fact that today I don't see any collapsed states. I don't see any rebirth of a collapsed state. Iraq is a failure. No. Syria, would it be? Somalia, well, everybody knows. Afghanistan, what about after the retirement? Mali, we have solved the military aspect of the question. Central Africa Republic is going down in a collapse. So I don't believe it's possible to rebuild, a state in which the political contract is not clear, because you have tribes, because you have clans, because you have trafficking, etc., etc. So we are facing, from the beginning of the 90s, we have used a lot of military strikes. to solve, crisis.
And it didn't work.
And they didn't work. And we left behind us, a lot of collapsed states like Libya and Iraq and Afghanistan. So probably for rulers of the world, it's time to think about the way to use military forces.
Well, let me add real quickly.
Very briefly.
Right, very briefly. I think that Libya sums up what is a major problem throughout much of the Arab world. We're seeing it happening now in Syria, as Syria is tearing itself apart. Libya, in many ways, was an artificial contrivance of colonial powers. Yeah. And it's three distinct regions that are now starting to break apart. Somehow within Libya, the Libyan political classes, the tribes, have to figure out how to accommodate these different regional tendencies, as well as addressing the economic and other needs of the people. And what has happened, though, is that you've got this element of criminality and the rise of these militias that are taking advantage of this vacuum. It is very hard to put it all together. It's ultimately, in my view, got to come from the Libyans.
Got to come from the Libyans themselves.
As opposed to being imposed or brokered from the outside.
From the outside. All right, we'll leave it there. William Jordan, I want to thank you. I want to thank Pierre CONESA and Céline Bardet. Before we go, though, let's say hello to Olivia Salazar-Winspear. It's our Media Watch segment. How are you?
Good evening. Very well.
We have been watching the story, of course, out of Libya, but now coming back to France, there's a man breathing a sigh of relief, I believe.
Yes, and not unrelated to Libya either, actually. There's a little Libya detail that we can bring up in a minute. Oh. Nicolas Sarkozy today has been, let's say, he's got off the hook. He has been cleared. The case against him in the Betancourt affair has been dropped. Now, just to recap.
This is the L'Oréal heiress.
This is the L'Oréal heiress who is alleged to have given 150,000 euros worth of funding to Nicolas Sarkozy's election campaign in 2007 in these murky envelopes that her accountant said went straight to Nicolas Sarkozy. Now, a judge today has found out there's no proof that Nicolas Sarkozy pressured this woman, because there was, of course, the accusation that he pressured a 90-year-old lady who was suffering from dementia into making this huge donation to his campaign.
So it doesn't say whether or not there were brown envelopes.
So we don't know about where the money was,
Okay.
who it came from, how it changed hands. But Nicolas Sarkozy is no longer involved in this. So huge sigh of relief from him. He updated his Facebook page saying so. He made a rare post. Well, do we know if it was him or not updating his page? I'm not sure. He very rarely posts on Facebook. He said, after all of this whole thing, the stress, all the hours of interrogation, the judges, the negative articles about me in the press, I've finally been declared innocent. And he has a little dig at his critics saying, for all of those who are writing things about me in all of this time, remember the principle of innocence before proven guilty. And he thanks people for their support, his allies, his family, and specifically Jean-François Copé, the head of the UMP party. Now, that could be relevant because, of course, the left-wing press are now saying, of course, this is a man who said he would run for the presidential elections in 2017, or suggested that he could be implicated in France's political future.
The current boss of the party, or Sarkozy himself?
Sarkozy himself.
Okay.
So we're talking about, what's next for the UMP. Libération, of course, reported this news, French left-wing paper. Very short article. I think the Libération article was just a pretext to open a forum for discussion and comments from their readers who were saying things like, we're disgusted, this makes me want to vomit, this shows that in France crime pays. There were some more jokey responses saying that the UMP now have produced this celebration T-shirt saying, Liliane who?
Okay.
Nouvelle Obs tried to push the story forward a little bit, saying, okay, the case has been dropped against him today, but this doesn't mean there are a lot of judicial dossiers weighing against Sarkozy still. There's this question of Libya. Could Muammar Gaddafi, through a third party, have financed his campaign in 2007? There's the Karachi affair, where he is accused of taking kickbacks from Pakistan in dodgy arms deals.
He was the campaign manager for the former Prime Minister,
Edouard Balladur.
Yeah.
And he's also accused of having sewn up some monopoly contracts for pollsters while he was in the Elysée. So people are saying this is not all over.
Okay. We'll continue to watch that. And of course, the story abroad that everybody's been watching is Iran's reaction to Netanyahu's speech.
Just briefly. Netanyahu made a bit of a fashion faux pas, let's say. He was talking to BBC Persian, talking about the relative lack of freedom in Iran, and he said that if Iranians were really free, they would listen to Western music, they would wear jeans, and they would vote democratically in free elections. Now, Iranians, whatever their restrictions in terms of democracy, they can wear jeans, and they do, and they weren't shy about reminding him with all of these tweeted pictures. This is me wearing jeans. We've even got a little picture of their Khamenei with his grandson wearing jeans.
Wearing jeans. There you go. Olivia Salazar-Winspear. I want to thank our panel, and we want to thank you for joining us here for the France 24 debate.